While other states are making it even harder to evict tenants with just cause eviction protections, the state of Texas is actually working to make it easier for landlords to evict tenants. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of the great state of Texas. Texas is one of those places where landlords are treated with respect, okay? We have a lot of property rights in this place, and you know what? I wish that it was this way all throughout the entire country because you know what the result of all those property rights is? More affordable housing. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, the housing in Dallas has become unaffordable. But by comparison to a place like New York or like California, they are dirt cheap. Okay. It's funny, but you look at it and you compare it and you're like, you know what? It makes sense that Texas is considered one of the best places in the entire country to live because they keep building new housing. They don't put any restrictions over the developers. They don't put any restrictions over the landlords, and they're able to build just a ton of new housing out there. Now, is it enough? No. Okay. Throughout the entire country, there's a housing shortage. And you know what? Even Texas can't keep up with the amount of people who need housing at this moment, especially with the number of people coming over the border right now. Okay. We just are getting inundated with a lot of new people. A lot of people are looking for housing right now. And the end result is there's, just a shortage of housing throughout the entire country, especially housing in the lower price ranges. However, Texas is doing the most out of any state to make sure that there's enough new housing available for the residents there. You look at the policies, you look at the politics between places like Texas and a place like New York or a place like California or a place like Washington State. And it is the exact opposite. They are doing the exact opposite of what they're saying, okay, we don't need more restrictions on landlords. We need to let them do their thing. We need to make it so that people have all of their property rights so that it is easy for developers to build. And that way we're going to keep housing affordable. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that right now they're working on a law to make it even easier for landlords to evict tenants. Okay? And this is good for landlords there. I don't own any properties there, but you know what? I I have certainly considered it. Okay, I've certainly considered it as a place where I might one day invest. I might move there one day. It's has some great cities in it. I really am fond of San Antonio in particular. So one day I might end up there. So I want to see more laws like this passed throughout the entire country. And for right now, Texas is leading the way. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. You can leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Okay, what do you think of Texas making it easier for landlords to evict tenants? Do you think this is a good thing or a bad thing? I know I have tenants and landlords who watch my videos, and obviously the tenants don't think that it's going to be the best thing available. But I assure you that if you're doing everything right as a tenant, paying your rent on time and paying what you owe, then there won't be any problems. Landlords don't want to go through the eviction process, and we only do it for the absolute worst tenants who screw us over, okay? And they screw us over by basically saying, hey, we're not going to pay the rent, or we're not going to pay the rent on time, and we're going to cost you thousands of dollars. So this isn't a thing that's going to hurt the good tenants out there who are doing everything right. Anyway, let's get into this article. This article is coming from candysdirt.com, and it says, eviction legislation could make it harder for Dallas renters to stay in their homes. And the article, of course, was written from a pro-tenant perspective, right? But I'm going to give you my opinions of everything that's being said. So let's get into it. As rents increase and Dallas experiences challenges with homelessness and a lack of affordable housing stock, life could become even more difficult for those on a fixed income trying to stay in an apartment. Senate Bill 986, House Bill 2045, introduced by Republicans Shelby Slawson of Stephenville and Brandon Crichton of Conroe, would override a Dallas ordinance that allows renters more time to make rent before being evicted. The legislation bans cities or counties from enforcing measures that prohibit, restrict, or delay delivery of a notice to vacate or the filing of an eviction lawsuit. Yeah, and Those are the kind of laws that I absolutely hate. And we're seeing a lot more of these throughout the entire country, even in more conservative places. I believe I've seen a couple of mentions of this sort of law in Florida, right? Where they're basically telling landlords, oh, before you can actually file eviction, you have to wait some waiting period, be it 7 days or, a couple of weeks or whatever, right? And this is to give the tenant more time. The only problem is that every single moment that you give the tenant more time is going to cost the landlord however much money in additional lost rental income. And that's why the landlord needs to be able to file eviction and get the process rolling as soon as possible. Okay? And it has nothing to do with them being evil. It is a smart business decision because the longer the process drags out, the more that the landlord takes in losses, the more they're going to have to charge their other tenants. And, that's why rents are so high in places that have all of these additional regulations. Okay. We're going to make up that lost income somewhere. And guess where we're going to make it up at? We're going to make it up on the tenants who are still living in their units. They're going to pay higher rent prices. And that's not good for anyone. That's not good for affordable housing. And it's not good for landlords because we're not actually making money doing that. We're just covering our losses. It's backed by the Texas Apartment Association, but not supported by tenants' rights and anti-poverty advocates such as Mark Melton of the Dallas Eviction Advocacy Center. And then they have, it looks like a tweet from this Mark Melton. I'm going to read it real quick. When the Apartment Association says they don't support a statewide or local law allowing tenants to avoid eviction by having a right to pay 100% of what they owe, and instead say we wanted to just work directly with tenants, they mean they want to have all the power when they work to evict a tenant. More than 40,000 evictions will be filed in Dallas County this year. Those tenants need basic protections from unscrupulous, I don't know that word, landlords. And there are plenty with no scruples. So basically, the landlords are saying, hey, we don't want the government to act as a middleman. And I've mentioned this many, many times before. The agreement that you come up with, right, should be between a landlord and a tenant. Okay? Two parties working, each one working on its own behalf. Okay? And you two can come together, fill out a contract, and come to an agreement. Now, when you put the government in between the landlord and the tenant, guess what happens, right? The whole process slows down. Everything becomes 10 times more complicated. Everything costs a lot more money. It's a disaster. So it looks like Dallas County was sitting there and they were saying, oh, well, we're going to step in there and we're going to be the one who makes the regulation and you can't do this and that. And the state lawmakers were saying, no. We were sick of these little cities, or counties or, smaller municipalities that think that they are a fiefdom, where they can just make up their own rules. They need to follow the state law. And, we're going to force them to follow that state law. We need a standard set of rules throughout the entire state. We don't want it to be that every little city, every little suburb, and an entire area has a different rule, making it darn near impossible for anyone to know what those rules are. So I do agree with this. Proponents say the legislation is necessary to avoid a patchwork of eviction rules that would challenge landlords with properties across multiple cities and justice of the peace courts that hear eviction cases, according to an in-depth report compiled by Christopher Connolly of KERA News. David Mentz of the Texas Apartment Association has said it's important to have consistent regulations across the state. Melton says more than 40,000 evictions will be filed in Dallas County this year. Simply put, Dallas County has a very, very high population. So 40,000 evictions isn't really as much as you think it is. But I agree with this Texas Apartment Association gentleman here. And, we don't need a patchwork of laws in every different place. Now, I personally own properties in multiple different cities here in Nebraska. So it's already complicated enough when you're talking about, hey, well, one city has this rule, one city has that rule. And for example, here in Omaha, I have to register all my rental properties and they have to be inspected. But in my property in Gretna, Nebraska, that's not necessary. So I'm already following two different sets of rules. And, when you're talking about small mom and pop landlords, a lot of the times they aren't intentionally breaking the rules. They just don't know about them. It's not like every time that a new landlord law comes up, they instantly tell everybody who's a landlord, hey, this is the new law. This is what you must follow. No, that just doesn't happen. So a lot of the smaller landlords who maybe own one property, it's an old house that they've had tenants in for the last 20 years, they might not be up to date on what the new law is. And then they can get caught up very easily, especially with these laws changing so much. And when you have the anti-landlord politicians running around there trying to punish us for just wanting to exist. So yeah, good for Dallas, or not Dallas, but Texas, for trying to, make it so that landlords can operate their businesses and not have to deal with more nonsense.